Welcome back to TW Garage. Today we got a cold start video for you.
Check it out.
Okay guys, I'm back in the garage today. Today's video was inspired by one of my subscribers who commented that he would like to see how I cold start my car. More specifically, he'd like to see what I did with the gas pedal and how I got him to start. Now, just to remind some people out there, both of these cars are carbureted. Neither one of them has a choke on them, so they are a little harder to start when they're cold. So today I am going to try to show you how I cold start them and technically my theory on how it works. Okay, so bear with me. All right guys, now I'm not going to cold start the big block. She's already been put up for the winter. She's got a carburetor hat on it. I've already fogged the engine. She's been put up for the winter, so we'll just be doing the Dirty Coupe today. This car doesn't have a battery shut-off switch, so I usually just unplug it or take the battery cable off. Alrighty. Alright, so I'm going to go over I guess my thoughts on how I get these things to start. Now, I'm not an expert, but this way that I do things seems to work for me. I'm sure other guys out there have a different way of doing it. Okay, so technically, depending on the weather, I believe today is around, let me check my weather app. Bear with me. Okay, I was checking my phone. Now, it started off like 30 degrees this morning. And it has warmed up to 40, according to my phone. See that? Okay, but this is a concrete garage, concrete block, concrete floor. It's still fairly cold in here. So this is going to be, I think my temperature gauge back here on the wall says it's like 32 degrees in this garage. So this is a cold start. I haven't tried to start this thing. It's been at least 3 weeks since I've actually started this thing, so hopefully it cooperates. All right, so get back to my theory on how this works. The colder it is outside, the more fuel your engine's going to want for it to start. Okay, especially when you don't have a choke. So for example, if it's like 60 degrees and above, I may only pump the gas pedal one time. Okay, if it's between 40 and 60 degrees, I might pump it 2 times. All right, colder than that, to probably about 30 to 25 degrees, I'll go 3 pumps. Anything colder than that, maybe 4 or 5. Okay, and one way to tell on how much you need to do it is, like, if you pump it 3 times and the car fires off but dies instantly, try 4 times. Add an extra pump in there until you can get it to where it stays running. Now, as soon as it fires off, you're going to want to touch the gas pedal. All right, it's not going to sit there and idle. If it did, it would be like 200-300 RPM, and of course, it's going to want to die on you. Okay, so you're going to want to be gentle with the gas pedal to keep it running until you get a little heat into it, and then it'll stay running. All right. Yes, it's a pain in the butt, but once you get the hang of it, it works out just fine. So again, I haven't started this car in 3 or 4 weeks. It is cold, no choke, and I'm going to try to show you how I start it, and hopefully it cooperates today. Okay guys, hopefully you can see this. Okay, I'm gonna go 1, 2, 3. Okay, and I'm not gonna touch that gas pedal until I hear this thing fire off, okay? Now, the subscriber wanted to see what switches and stuff I hit. This car here has no switches, okay? Now the big block does have an ignition switch, and on it I'll let it crank over a few turns before I hit the ignition switch. That way it'll allow it to build some oil pressure before it fires off. Okay, this car, it's all just a key, so there's no extra switches. Now if this thing starts and like I said instantly dies, then I'm probably going to give it 4 pumps on the next try. Okay, so we'll see how this thing starts off. And hopefully, like I said, hopefully she cooperates. I'll make sure she's in neutral. Okay. Let's see what I'm doing with the gas pedal. Hopefully you can hear me. See right there, she's running. Okay, so it did cooperate today. Hopefully you guys can hear me, because I'm still in the garage. Now, I got my foot on the accelerator. Okay, I'm barely pushing it, just enough to keep it running. All right, because I don't like to rev a cold engine, especially when you got thick oil in it. This one's got 1540 engine oil in it. The big block has 2050. I really don't like revving that one up when she's cold. All right, but you see here, she's packing some good oil pressure. She's charging really good, and she is boom cold. Okay. Now a lot of guys, they get a little bit worried about this. When it's cold, you really can't pay too much attention to your air to that gauge there. They don't read right when they're cold. So, and it changes as it warms up. All right. So this thing cooperated today. Now if it would have started and then like instantly died, I'd have went 4 pumps. If it had been like in a 20-degree range, like lower 20s, I guarantee you it would have required 4 pumps to get this thing to fire off. But this car's always started pretty good once you get the hang of it. Now I'm gonna go ahead and shut this thing off. Well, actually, I'm gonna show you here real quick. She idles. She's idling. I'm not sure if you guys can hear that. She's probably idling 500 RPMs. You can see the steam here a little bit. She's probably idling around 500 RPMs because she's cold. Okay, but she is idling. Okay. Now in the wintertime, I do set my air fuel mixture screws a tad rich, just so it'll do that right there. If they're on the lean side, they have to be completely warmed up before it'll sit there and idle, especially when it's this cold out. Okay, so that's another little trick, is give those screws about an 1/8 inch or an 1/8 of a turn. I'm going to shut her off. Give those screws about another 1/8 of a turn, maybe a 1/16 if you can, and it'll idle better when she's cold, and not to mention she'll fire off like that. So like I said, if it was 20 degrees, I guarantee it required 4 pumps. Okay, the big block, when it gets to this cold, sometimes it requires 4, 5, sometimes 6 pumps, but it'll always fire up just like this car does too. Now, like I said, if it would have fired up and then instantly died, I'd have added an extra pump. Okay, but the warmer it is, you won't have to do that. Okay, say it's still cold out, you already fired your car up, you drove to your destination. Okay, it shouldn't require 3 pumps to get her to fire up again. Okay, now she's going to cool off a little bit. Now, not unless it's been like 8 or 10 hours. Okay, but usually it won't require that 3rd pump. I'd probably start off with just 2 if it's been like 8 hours or longer. But if it's only been like an hour or 2, do 1 pump, see how she fires off. Okay, usually once you have her started for the day, it don't require as much to kick her over for the next time, because they usually hold just a little bit of heat in for a good little while, especially the V8s. So hopefully that answered some questions. I'm sorry the car fired right off, and I promise you that this thing hasn't been started in 3 weeks, 3 to 4 weeks, probably a month or so, because I've been busy. life happens sometimes, and like I said, I generally had the cars put up for the winter, so I'm just glad she started off the way she did. This thing, like I said, always seems to. Now, I could try it again, no pumps. Okay, I didn't warm it up. It's got maybe just a little bit of heat, so I can show you that real quick. All right, I'm not even going to touch that gas. See if she'll fire. Just like that. I said this car here, well, she's idling even slower now, probably about 400 RPMs. Now, yeah, I don't have a gauge in here, but it just sounds like it's idling that low. So there you go. Dirty Coupe. Doesn't mind if it's cold, as long as you know how to work that gas pedal. So I hope that I answered some questions. If it didn't, leave your question downstairs, down in the comments below. And if I can, I'll try to answer them the best I can. That's about as best as I can do. I'm not an expert. I just, I've been around carburetors my whole life. I've tinkered with them, and they don't scare me one bit. And like I said, both these cars don't have a choke, and they'll both start that way. Okay. Another thing is, I've seen some people make a mistake where they'll do the pumps, they'll pump the throttle, but they'll also keep that throttle down about halfway when they go to crank it. I've had problems with doing that, even if your timing's set right and you know, if everything's just working. I've had them backfire through the carburetor doing that. Okay, the big block's done that to me a couple times, and trust me, the timing on that, it's only at 28 degrees. It shouldn't backfire, but it will if you're holding that throttle down when you crank on it when she's cold. It's just nature of the beast. Okay, but when I go to crank them, I'm not touching that throttle until I hear it fire off, and as soon as it fires off, get on the throttle a little bit. And then sometimes, especially if you're the first circuit that the carburetor goes onto isn't rich enough, okay, you may have to sit there, and what you're doing is you're actually squirting the accelerator pump. Okay, that's adding fuel when you do that. You seen me when I started, I was barely, you don't have to floor it. I was giving it, you know, a 1/4 inch of throttle, just barely. And what I was doing was, there's an accelerator pump in the front, was squirting extra fuel in it to keep it running. Okay, you only have to do that until you get a little bit of heat in it. Then it'll sit there. Then you just maybe push the gas pedal just a little bit until she warms up, and then when you let off of it, it should idle. Okay, once it gets a little bit of heat in it. They are cold-natured without a choke. All right, but that's always worked for me on just about every car I've ever had. So I hope I helped somebody. Again, if I didn't answer all your questions, leave your question down there in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Help me out with this channel, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.